Good evening, everyone. Welcome and thank you for tuning in. My name is Carla Berlin, and you're watching Around Town TV Live. Minnesota's lifestyle and business experts, we've been bringing you the best kept secrets, businesses, organizations, and people since 2003. We are the Twin Cities' longest airing television community showcase, and that wouldn't be possible if it weren't for all of you. If you caught us last night, yes, that was like a little on air practice. There was some technical difficulties. We got those resolved when we jumped off. And of course, no matter how many times you test or whatever, that's just a part of live streaming. So we thank you for tuning back in this evening, getting ready for Monday Night Football. So we'll have you all set for that. And if you've survived some of the storms going around the Twin Cities, tonight, though, our topic is about the lost art of leading. And I am so grateful to have with me a great leader. Andrew is the current county commissioner of Sherburn County District 1. He is also the president and owner of AJ Hulse Company, which owns and operates 188 men's fine salons in both the shops of Arbor Lakes and downtown Wayzata. It is in downtown Wayzata, right? The other one?
It's in the Promenade of Wayzata. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for clarifying. And he has over 35 years of business and leadership experience in both, well, the senior executive level, general management, marketing, and operational roles. Previously, Andrew served for a decade as a naval flight officer. Thank you for your service in both operational and instructional roles, achieving the rank of lieutenant commander. He also completed 3 deployments. Additionally, he has completed executive programs in leadership, marketing, organizational change, and Six Sigma from the Wharton School of Business, Kellogg School of Management, and Hawaii Pacific University. Please welcome Andrew Hulse. Thank you for being here again tonight.
Well, thanks, and we'll start with our take 2.
Right. Oh, that's just a part of life, and it happens. And but thank you for being agreeable to come back tonight.
Oh yeah, it'll be fun.
You and I have talked a lot offline about leadership, and I'm grateful for all of your assistance with our program, Leaders and Achievers of America. But for the viewers tuning in, leadership is a big deal, especially right now in our country. We can always use great leaders. How did you become interested in leadership?
I started out, obviously, I went through the commissioning program I went through was Navy ROTC at Purdue University. And you start out, you go through, and each semester you have a class that you go through, and it's, leadership, and it's different aspects of becoming an officer in the military. And that sort of just lays the groundwork. As I've gone through my career, what I realize is that initial part, also almost that introduction to leadership, is more leadership academic training than most people get in their entire careers.
Oh.
So consequently, after I graduated and I was commissioned, I went through flight school, and then joined my first squadron. When I joined my first squadron, the Navy had started a new program on how they were doing leadership training and leadership development. It was called Total Quality Leadership. It was actually written by Dr. Edward Deming, who, for those of you that are familiar with his work, he's one that went to Japan after World War II and really restarted Japan's economy. And
Wow.
taught leadership and how to do statistical decision making and those sort of things. So I raised my hand at the squadron and I said, I'd like to go through these courses. And so they started sending me through these train the trainer courses where you'd go, you'd learn this material, and then you're expected to come back to the squadrons and start to teach it. As I was doing that, I was also doing my day job of flying. And in Navy squadrons, when you have your flying job, but you also have a ground job. And in my case, I had a ground job that was it was in maintenance. And when I first got to my squadron, I had a really, really good chief that sort of ran the department that reported up through me. And any officer worth his salt knows that when you show up to a squadron, if you've got a chief, you learn to listen to the chief.
Right.
So I listened to my chief, and she was a fantastic leader. She did a great job. But not too long after I joined the squadron, it was time for her to rotate out to her next assignment. So she left, and they promoted a leading petty officer into the role of or a second class petty officer into the role of leading petty officer for the branch. And she was kind of brought up under the old school of, the Navy, do it because I said to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And she didn't have the support of her troops, and she was really kind of flailing. Because of some of the leadership programs that I was going through, I had some reading materials, and I convinced her, well, why don't you just read some of these things? And some of them were just very, very simple leadership books.
Mm-hmm.
And they were actually kind of fun to read the way they were written. They were almost in a
that makes a huge difference.
Yeah, they're in a humorous style. So she'd read a couple of chapters, and then we sit and we talk about it, and
Mm-hmm.
we went back and forth. But as we're going through this, I start to see this change in her behavior, and she takes this this theory to heart, and she really starts changing how she's interacting with her troops and how she views her job as a leader. And her troops responded to her. The sailors responded to her extremely well. She ended up doing a fantastic job. Well, fast forward about 4 years later, I'm getting ready to rotate out of the squadron and go to my next assignment. And I'm over at the Admiral spaces, and I'm doing the checkout, all the stuff you do to get ready to go to your next duty assignment. And she catches me in the hallway, and she had just been assigned to the Admiral staff.
Wow.
And she stopped me and she said, I would have never gotten here if you hadn't taken the time with me. And I told her, she did all the work, right? And that's what I told her. But that just reemphasized to me how when leadership, when applied well, can have a real impact on people's lives. And so that stuck with me. And so consequently, after those Navy courses, I found out that Hawaii Pacific University had a program in organizational change, which was really unique because Hawaii is in the middle of the Pacific. It branches Eastern culture and Western culture, and there's very different views of leadership and cultural dynamics. And so they taught both of those and how they compare and contrast. And consequently, because of that, I got to know well the head of the department there, a guy that by the name of Dr. Jerry Glover, who was doing research on how you quantify organizational culture. And by doing that, you can figure out where within the culture it's ripe for change when you're trying to do a change in a culture. And so consequently, and then that led me afterwards to continue with my master's program. And then I just continued to do and go through various leadership development programs, and just a voracious amount of different academics to learn different styles and different theories and all that. And it's just been a lifelong journey that I've kept with me.
Well, and clearly a leader, yes, you were going through those courses, but the fact that you took the time to suggest to this petty officer, hey, here's some reading, not everyone would do that. And not everyone would be receptive. So clearly, two leaders that have those inherent traits she needed someone like you that already was a leader, that you were developing those skills at the time. So kudos to both.
Yeah, I think we were developing those skills together at the same time.
Yes. And many of you watching know that I've newly started a position as regional vice president with Stream companies. And one of the things and the reasons I went to the company is I heard the culture was great, leadership was great. And you hear that, you check it out. Of course, people confirm that. But I can tell you, my 4th day completed, I am blown away because the leadership is true to one of the next things we're going to talk about. One of the things, and I'm not quoting you, you didn't say it just like this, but we've talked about this offline, that we don't train people to be professional leaders. We train them to be excellent engineers, marketeers, plumbers, electricians, and then we promote the best technical people in leadership roles, assuming they're good leaders. And as you shared, that is bluntly a false assumption. Let's talk about that.
Yeah, leadership is an entirely different skill set than their technical skill set, and that's one of the things I found. And I was so disappointed, and I don't think that's too strong a word, when I went into corporate America on the lack of training and the lack of development of leadership skills.
Yes.
And and your point is exactly right. What corporate America tends to do is they will take someone who is technically very excellent in their field, whether it's engineering, whether it's the trades or plumbing, electrician, whatever the skill set is, they'll take someone who is excellent at that and they'll promote them over their peers and expect that because they were a great engineer or whatever, they'll be a great leader of the team. And that's the skill sets don't overlap.
Right.
That's typically false. And then they expect them to know how to be a leader without any training. And so it's a problem that I find in corporate America, a significant problem in the lack of investment in training people how to be good leaders, just assuming that they're going to be good because they were good at some other skill set. You wouldn't do that in any other profession, but you do that with leadership. So I think that's one of the big problems that I've seen in corporate America. And I've also seen, and because of that, that leads to some deep-seated misunderstandings of what leadership is and a failure to understand what it isn't. Leadership is not telling people what to do, right?
Right.
Leadership fundamentally at its core is creating an environment and helping the people that you are responsible for be the best they can be at their jobs. And notice I didn't say the people you're in charge of, because once again, it's not about being in charge. It's about removing barriers. It's about understanding the motivations of your individual team members and helping them to do the best job that they can do, realizing that everybody has different skill levels and different skill sets.
Right.
So when you look at leadership in that light, when you look at leadership in the light of, my job as a leader is to make your job easier, as opposed to my job is to tell you what to do.
Right.
That's an entirely different mindset on how you do your daily work.
So true. And the other area I've seen that in is, like, for example, professional coaches that were players. Like, for example, a Wayne Gretzky, who was a superstar hockey player, became a coach, and he happened to be a good coach. But not all great athletes translate to great coaches, and vice versa. It's the same type of principle.
Yeah, it absolutely is. I mean, and you see this all the time in companies where you've got someone who is technically great and they move into a role. Not only do they struggle with just the interpersonal piece of leading a team, but their first instinct typically, if something is not going correct, is to jump in and do it themselves. And that's exactly the wrong answer, because one, you're demotivating your team member that you just stepped on, because now you've made them feel like they're not adequate in what they're doing. And two, they don't learn anything out of it. If you go in and fix it for them, they're never going to improve. They're never going to learn. We learn more from, and you don't want people to make big mistakes, but you learn more from your mistakes than you do from your successes. You have to let people, struggle a little bit, and wrestle with some of the problems that you come up with. If you always just give them the answer, one, you may be wrong, because you're not as close to the problem as you think you are as a leader.
Right. Yes.
And two, you're not helping them to grow. And I have found time and time again, when you help people to work through the problems on their own, they may not come to the answer that you would have come to, by the way. That's okay.
Good point.
But if you help them through the process and help them learn how to manage through these things, they become much more productive, much better employees. And frankly, they'll respect you as a leader much more.
That's so such great points and insightful. And in fact, we have someone who wrote, wow, really inspiring and insightful. Barb Epstein. Barb, I have known for 20 years. She owned an agency that did a lot of work with a lot of big clients here in town for years and years and years. She sold it several years ago and is still a dear friend of mine today. And here she is as a leader, ran a company with people, and your information is definitely resonating with the viewers that are online. We've had several people that are following. For those of you who are watching that maybe didn't sell your agency or company, doesn't matter what size. Andrew is also available for speaking engagements, consulting projects to help you with your leadership or to help you get a handle on that. And we can talk a little bit about that. One of the things, though, I wanted to ask you is, and we talked a little bit about this offline as well, as corporations look and view people much differently today than they did before.
Mhm.
And I know it'll roll into the next question too, but let's touch on that.
Yeah, one of the things that, and I became increasingly disillusioned with corporate America as I got toward the end of my career, and it's actually coming um, to a serious head at this point.
Hmm.
And that is, in the 90s, there was a theory that had primarily originally floated around the halls of academia, Harvard Business and that sort of thing,
Yeah.
that the employees should be treated as any other asset of the company.
Hmm.
Previous to that, if you got hired by a company, as long as you did your job, you worked hard, you were, reasonably competent at your job, you basically had a job for life.
Hmm.
In the 90s, that switched, and it was primarily brought in by Jack Welch from GE, and then it was kind of permeated through corporate America in the late 90s and early 2000s, where they changed the view that people are just another asset,
Hmm.
like a piece of capital or dollars or anything else, and they can be moved around the chessboard or taken off the chessboard in order to make a number at the end of the quarter.
Hmm.
And that fundamentally broke the social contract that employees had with employers for nearly 100 years prior to that.
Right.
Now, um, so consequently, where that has led us to is where we're at today, where the the um, the baby boomers, they stayed with their companies basically through their career. Gen X, which is me, they saw this transition where you went into the workforce expecting to be able to work for a company until you decided to retire, as long as you were honest and did your work. Um, and then we saw this transition where no, now you're just another asset. You're just a number. You may or may not be able to stay with the company. It depends on how we're doing in any particular quarter.
Hmm.
And that within Generation X, that was a fundamental change that changed how they viewed, and rightly so. A lot of Gen X is considered sort of the jaded generation when it comes to the workforce, because that trust was broken.
Yeah.
Their kids saw that happen, and so now what you have is you have millennials and Gen Z that view the workplace as, if the employers are not going to show me any loyalty, I'm absolutely not going to show them any loyalty. So
Right.
my career is going to be a career of going from job to job, from company to company, because I don't owe my company any loyalty whatsoever. That's
Interesting.
where
Okay.
we've ended up.
Hmm.
And what's interesting now, and I know we're going to do another show, and I think this is going to be a key topic on it, because
Yes.
it is where that's led us now is we've got a whole generation, those folks that are 50 and over, that are being let go en masse
Right.
in corporate America. They're too young to retire, but they
Right.
can't get hired.
Right.
And so consequently, we're seeing a lot of those individuals try to go into entrepreneurship, consulting, those sort of things, because they need a way to make a living until they
Right.
can get to retirement. And so that's put a lot of pressure on organizations trying to help entrepreneurs start these companies, especially later in
Hmm.
your career. So we'll talk about that on the next one.
Oh, absolutely. But to that point, so I remember I am a Gen Xer. As I was getting into the market in the 90s, graduating from college in 91, I remember my dad saying, "Hey, just go like become a receptionist at Medtronic and work your way up." Well, I actually did become a receptionist at well, it wasn't Caldwell Banker Burnett back then. It was just Burnett Realty. And I was so good at my job. There weren't cell phones back then. They called me their executive receptionist. They didn't want to take me off that. And while
Mhm.
I made more than most receptionists, it was never going to pay the bills. And I knew I wanted to go into their communication department and grow, but they kind of pigeonholed you into that. I had to leave in order to grow, which I ended up in media and sales. And, my degree was in journalism and the whole thing. But um, one of the things that I found even now, to what you were just talking about, I am in the 50s. I knew it was time to pivot as the media became so fragmented and all of my strategic partnerships had proprietary information. And it was time I removed myself as the middleman, which I just did. But go and get a job when you've been out of the corporate world for 23 years self employed. Most people do not even want to touch you. What I'm so blessed with, and I want to talk about this next, is I found a company that really did value entrepreneurial experience, environments, that sort of thing. But that isn't every company and it isn't always a match. Right now, the job market seems very, very tough for people my age, as well as the kids right out of college. Let's talk about that as well.
Yeah, I think I think this goes back to the fact that we still have this culture in corporate America of people are just assets.
Mhm.
We don't teach leadership, and what we do teach um, is sort of the antithesis of leadership. There's an old saying, that which gets measured gets worked on, right?
Mhm.
And if you think about the corporate scorecards that we have
Right.
today, it's the quarterly reports to Wall Street, right? It's the financials, it's the balance sheet, it's those hard numbers. We don't measure our success with our people, with
Mhm.
with how they're progressing, with how what is our retention, what is our employee retention, and how can we work on that. That may be something that some companies work on internally, but
Mhm.
it's a tertiary metric. And so it just drives more of this. We just treat people like an asset. We don't develop them. They're an expendable resource, and we see this a lot actually in IT. Um,
Mhm.
you see this in Silicon Valley a lot. Those companies have become known for just being new graduate mills. They hire somebody in, they bring them in, they expect to work there for 2, 3, 4 years, and then expect them to move on. And they don't care that
Mhm.
employee's not going to stay there for 10 years. They don't value the experience. They don't value the longevity, and it shows in their turnover rates.
Right. And in competency and how people view their customer service, their products, et cetera. It's a trickle down. What do you think perhaps is a solution to some of the problems that we've talked about? I know that's a loaded question.
It is a loaded question.
Yeah.
I think that I think one I, I think there is sort of a movement at this point, a realization that we took a wrong step. Right.
Mhm.
We do need to focus on developing leaders. We do need to focus on developing leaders that understand what real leadership is, not just being in charge. And we need to focus on things. While we need to focus on the P&L and we need to focus on our balance sheet, because it doesn't do any good for a business to go out of business, then you haven't helped your employees either. Uh,
Right.
but we can do it in such a way that that we're not so short term focused.
Mhm.
And I think part of that is, at this point, there are some companies that recognize this and have started, really focusing and investing on developing people as leaders, but I think they're the exception still and not the rule. I think the best thing you can do is take the initiative yourself and go through and seek out, educational opportunities to lead. Find leaders that you admire, that you see work, and use them as a mentor.
Oh, great.
Talk through scenarios.
Mhm.
Nobody develops into a good leader on their own. They always have somebody else that has helped them along the way, and so I think taking the initiative yourself and looking for those things and looking for opportunities to practice.
Yes.
Because I saw a clip with Simon Sinek yesterday, and he was talking about business and how we view business as a win or lose scenario. By the end of the quarter, you either made the numbers you were expected to make, or so you either won or you lost.
Right.
He said that's entirely the wrong way to look at business. You should look at business almost as a lifestyle, as we do a lifestyle. He said it's like exercise, right? If you've decided that you're going to get yourself in shape, you're going to lose some weight, and you set a goal, by Memorial Day, I want to be this weight, and I want to be able to run this far, whatever it is. And you get to Memorial Day and you're not quite there. Does that mean you failed?
Right.
No. It means you're probably in the best shape you've been in your life at that point.
Right.
And it's not a failure. You just say, okay, well, but I didn't make it by Memorial Day, but I'll make it by 2
Labor
months
Day.
later.
Yeah. Right.
Whatever it is. And so you continue on that path. It's a continuum. It's not a win-lose. I think leadership is the same thing. Leadership is a lifestyle. And the reason I say that is there are no perfect leaders either. And you have to have the grace with yourself to realize you're going to make mistakes.
Yeah.
But you can't view the mistakes that you make as, okay, well, now I'm a terrible leader. I screwed this up. I blew this opportunity,
right,
or whatever. You have to realize that we're all human. None of us are perfect,
right.
And there's going to be times that you're going to that you're going to make a mistake. You just have the trick with a good leader is you have to live up that you made that mistake.
Right.
And that you have to be able to move on from that. There's a saying I used to say, and it's especially true. It was especially true in the Navy, but it turns out it's true everywhere else. I used to say, your sailors will watch you as a leader and emulate you, especially at the times you don't want them to, when you're at your worst. And we all have those times where, for whatever reason,
right.
we're not at our best, and sometimes
not our A game, right?
Yep. And you have to own that.
Yes.
Good leaders own that and say, and they have to be able to say it publicly. Yeah, I screwed that up. Here's what I should have done differently, and here's what I'll do differently next time. Right. You're
good point.
The people that you're responsible for respond to that infinitely more than just trying to cover up your mistakes or saying I wasn't wrong. It turns out to be wrong once in a while. It's just the way it works.
Well, and you've already been expounding on what good leadership is, and you may have some more things to add there, but I'd love to kind of get rounded out of what good leadership is and isn't.
Yeah, I think like I said, my key philosophy is what I'm doing, is it making it easier for my employees to do the best they can at their jobs, or is it not? And there are times that you need to do things that it doesn't really contribute to your employees doing well. You have to sit around and pay the bills someday, right? You have to pay invoices. You have to do those things.
Right.
But fundamentally, if you're leading an organization, regardless of the size, is what you're doing trying to make it easier for them to be successful. And that's really the key tenet. What leadership isn't is it's not it's not telling people what to do. It's
Mhm.
not being in charge.
Mhm.
Uh, you can be in a leadership position. That's different than being a leader.
Okay.
Now, the thing I will say is that you also have to be situational. Situational leadership is very important. It's more important in some positions than others. And what I mean by that is, if I'm in a business environment and I'm working with my people and I'm trying to figure out how each individual responds, what they respond to, I've got time there, right? There's nothing that's time critical. There are other positions where you also have to be able to be very directive very quickly. And those times usually involve the threat of life, limb, or significant damage to property. Those three things. So if you think about it um, from a law enforcement perspective, from a
Mhm.
military perspective, from a firefighter's perspective, most people aren't in those types of roles, but those roles do exist, and there are leaders within those roles.
Mhm.
Those leaders have to be able to transition from figuring out why Joe isn't responding this week. He's got something personal going on that may be affecting him. To if he opens that door, someone's going to get hurt,
Mhm.
and you have to be a leader that can do both if you're in
Mhm.
that type of role. So that's another aspect of leadership, depending on the type of role you're in.
Great. Gosh, great points. And thank you for that. If somebody's watching this and they would like to hire you to come speak on leadership or come into their business, whether it's small, medium, or a corporation, I would you like them to reach out to you by email or?
Yeah, that would be fine. If someone's interested in that, they can email me. My email address is not the easiest, but
Okay.
it's Andrew, Andrew at, and it's the numbers 188 spelled out. So it's EIGHTEENEIGHT.com. They
And
can
I'll
reach
go
out.
back and put that in too.
Yeah,
Yep.
so
Okay.
they can reach out to me on that email.
Perfect. And I know I'm going to go back in tonight and tag you on your platforms that we're connected on so people can. And please DM me. I will connect you directly to Andrew if you wish. If you don't want to email, or want to message him through social media, would prefer to reach out to him directly through his email, I will get that too. Is there anything else that we haven't covered?
I think I think we've touched on a lot of the key points. I think what we'll do, like we mentioned, we're going to do another one in a month. I
Yes.
think it's important to talk about, because of this shift with these individuals over 50. I've had lunch with a number of individuals that they're reaching that point in their career. They're realizing that they may not have the choice to stay with their company that they've been with for 20 years, and
Mhm.
they're looking to move into entrepreneurship. They're looking to move into starting their own company, some way that they can make a living, to bridge the gap until they're able to retire. And there's a big need to understand what it takes to start up a business and to run a business from scratch. And so I think we're going to touch on that a little bit next time. And I think
Perfect.
that's an important topic. I've worked with a number of people over the years that have tried to start businesses, and um, they just don't realize the scope of what they need to be prepared to do. And so I think
Absolutely.
that's helpful as well.
Oh, that'll be great to add that. Yes, Andrew will be back in about 3 weeks, and then he'll hopefully be a regular on the show to talk about various topics. And having been an entrepreneur myself most of my life, well, for sure the last 23 years, it I always, when I go and speak to colleges or to youth or to anybody that I'm hired and it's on entrepreneurship, I'll always say, you get to pick which 18 hours a day you work because you're really always on. I've never really had a vacation except for once. That was way back when it cost just way too much for cell phones to be international. I was in Bora Bora, but other than that, I've always taken calls, and it's just what you do.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, the thing I tell people is, if you're realizing where we're at from a corporate perspective on the worry that's always in the back of people's mind, I could be laid off at any time.
Oh, yeah.
It's a different worry when you're running your own, when you're trying to start up your own business, and that you're doing it and you're hopeful, but you're also working without a net.
Yes.
And so
Yes.
there's a lot of pressure there as well. And then as you grow the business, then you worry about, I got to take care of all these people now.
Right. Exactly.
Their livelihoods depend on me making the right decision too. So, so it becomes a different set of,
Sure
certainly a
does.
different set of worries.
And I understand those. I lived those myself. And then just having the character and the integrity to know to take care of those clients when they are, so my
Yeah.
clients, as an example, like I said, I had all these great strategic partnerships with proprietary information. Well, it became very evident with the fragmented market that no, if I remove myself, everybody wins. And so, but not everybody can and do that. And I feel really blessed. But I had to work hard at it. It didn't come easy.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
And I think I think the thing I want to leave people with is once again, leadership is a journey.
Yes.
You can never read enough. You can never listen to enough podcasts. You can never learn enough.
Mhm.
Every time I go in and I listen to someone else speak, or every time I took a new class, or every time I took a new development program, I always took something away from that I'm like, oh, I didn't think about that.
Mhm.
And then the real key is you have to practice.
Yes. You have to
There,
implement what you learn.
there is muscle memory involved with leadership as much as there is with playing golf or baseball or tennis or whatever else you want to do. You have to practice and practice and practice. And,
Good point.
and eventually it becomes muscle memory, but you're still going to make those mistakes. So you still got to own those.
Mhm.
But we have to have the grace to allow ourselves to be human. But you
Mhm.
will get better and better and better at it if you do that. And I've been blessed with some really great leaders over the years that have done exactly that. They practiced and practiced and practiced and became excellent leaders and excellent mentors. And that's what I think we need to focus on, is
Mhm.
we want to be those mentors, because we always want to leave something better than we found it. And if we could leave the workplace in America better than we found it, then I think we've done our jobs.
Well, and I was looking at the schedule. You're back. Is it October? Do you know the date off the top of your hand? I know. I was
I don't
looking at
I
my
don't know, and I set my phone aside so it didn't distract me. So I don't know what I
right,
did with it.
me too. And then I was
Oh,
trying to
oh,
it's okay.
here it is. Here it is. Hold on, I can
Yeah.
find it for us.
Great. Yes.
Um,
So Andrew will be back with us here in October, and we'll be talking about his 18-8 salons as well. But of course, leadership always plays into that.
I think it's October 8th, is it
It
not?
is. Yep, it is. Usually numbers stick in my head, but I thought I better not just throw that out there. And we've got some great shows between now and then. Is there anything else as we wrap up that you feel you would like to share?
Uh, you know, just have people feel free to reach out to me if they
Will
have
do.
questions. Happy to answer questions. Happy to answer questions. Actually, how small government works too. As you mentioned, I'm also a county commissioner
Yes, I started that out. Yep.
in Sherburn County, and I've been doing. I'm in my second term there, and that's leadership within government is also very interesting compared to leadership in other organizations. And so it's I, I I give you one anecdote, which is kind of fun. So in counties, typically you have a county administrator.
Mhm.
He's kind of the CEO of the county, and then you have the county board that he reports to. The he or she is in probably the worst position of any position that I can think of, because you've got 5 bosses that have
Mm.
no incentive to agree with each other.
Right.
So they have to manage 5 bosses that have really no reason to agree on anything. And I always congratulate our administrator because he navigates it extremely well, and he does a very good job of it. And dealing with the five of us yahoos is
Right. Well, you're not a Yahoo, anything but I get where you're going with that. And the lost art of learning is truly it is just that. So thank you for giving us a lot of insight, some great points. I know that we'll continue to have, topics and relevant to this and bringing it into a lot of the leadership you're doing in our next show. And I thank all of you who have tuned in and stayed on and followed us with Take Two. We have like I said, a great lineup between now and then. I'll promote that as well. Tonight, I will go back in and tag Andrew and put all of his contact information in there. So should you want to reach out, please do so. And you can also put it in the comments and we'll respond there as well. Anything else?
No, any questions from anybody? Or are we
no questions, just a lot of kind comments.
Oh, excellent. We always
Yeah, just comments about it being inspiring and insightful, and I agree. And we've had a stable crowd. I mean, it's gone up and come down a little bit, but we've had a pretty strong following. So, and in fact, real quick before we sign off, I'm going to go to our Instagram, and yep, it looks like we've had a good following there. So yeah, I believe. That's great. So what we'll do then is I look forward to having you back on. And thank you, everybody, again for tuning in. My name is Carla Berline, and we've had Andrew Hulse on tonight talking about the loss of art leadership. I have been hosting Around Town TV since 2003, and I look forward to continuing that for as long as you will stay tuned and watch. And we will see you again. We're usually on Tuesdays, but in September, October, and November, we do switch to Wednesdays. So we'll see you next Wednesday evening, 7 p.m. Central Time, right here on Around Town TV. We'll see you then. Thank you. Goodbye. Thanks again, Andrew.
Thank you.